A busy day on Capitol Hill today as lawmakers are trying to get answers on the security failures that led to two assassination attempts on President-elect Donald Trump's life. Now, they are pressing the acting Secret Service director, Ronald Rowe, and Rowe calls those incidents an abject failure. Those are his words, and says he is committed to doing everything in his power to ensure that the Secret Service never has a failure like this again. Now, if you remember, the Secret Service came under criticism after a July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, when a 20-year-old gunman fired 8 shots into the crowd. One bullet grazed President-elect Trump's ear. Another bullet killed a supporter in the crowd. Now, task force panel says that gunman was able to evade law enforcement due to fragmented lines of communication. Lawmakers also want to know about an incident that happened 2 months later when Secret Service arrested a man with an AK-47 outside of a Trump golf course. That man was found within 100 yards of Trump while he was golfing. Here's Texas Congressman Pat Fallon grilling Rowe on what happened on July 13th.
Did President Trump, was he provided a security detail akin to what a sitting president would receive?
At that time, he was not.
He was not. Would you agree that if there was a counter-surveillance unit there in Butler on the 13th, he would have been safer?
I think if there was a counter-surveillance unit advanced that was on the ground, it could have aided the advance team in identifying the AGR.
So he would have been safer? President Trump would have been safer? Yeah, okay. I don't think this would have even occurred, but be that as it may.
CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga joins us this morning to walk us through what happened in that hearing. Nicole, what security failures did the panel find, and how is Rowe going about in addressing them?
Yeah, Liz, this was a harsh hearing in a line of really harsh hearings. Task Force Chairman Mike Kelly was at that Butler rally, and he called it flat out messed up. Committee members were struck by the lack of planning, noting one of the sniper teams on that day had a line of sight that was blocked by a tree. Chairman Kelly also likened communications on that day to a game of telephone. Other lawmakers pointing out the short runway that Secret Service as an agency has when it comes to training. About a third of agents have less than 5 years experience. Now, as for what Rowe said, he conceded that the pace of this process frustrates him, but that he has identified failures by multiple employees within the agency, although it's unclear if he will move to terminate any agents. He also called the biggest shortfalling of July 13th, that failure to recognize the public access to that AGR building. That is, of course, that roof where the gunman fired 8 rounds from. And Rowe actually said that there was no written communication about Secret Service plans to secure that. And this was also interesting. We learned that moments ago that Secret Service is now using autonomous robot dogs to scan the seawall of the president-elect's Mar-a-Lago residence.
And the committee already released a 53-page interim report back in October. When are we going to see this final report, and what can we expect to be in it?
Yeah, Liz, the task force panel, it's made up of 7 Republicans and 6 Democrats. It's expected to publish that report with the findings in coming weeks. Their due date for that report is December 13th. What we heard today is a preview, really, of what's to come. A lack of command and control, too many sight lines to the former president. Members saying that committee staff have conducted 46 transcribed interviews, reviewed 20,000 pages of documents, and sat in on over a dozen briefings. Following today's hearing, they'll meet to consider that final report. And in its preliminary report, the committee called what happened on July 13th preventable. We can expect more of that language, plus, the chairman said today, over a dozen recommendations for the agency.
And Nicole, shifting gears here for a moment, senators were briefed on China's alleged efforts to hack into U.S. telecommunications companies and then also steal data. What are we learning about that breach and who it's impacting?
Yeah, a fascinating story. U.S. officials believe Chinese state hackers breached at least 8 U.S. telecommunications companies. These are companies you've heard of: Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. And sources briefed on the hack say that it compromised the metadata of hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of Americans. So that's the who, what, where, and when of your phone calls, plus penetrated a wiretap system used by the Department of Justice. The bad actors also eavesdropped on audio calls and spied on the text messages areas of a much smaller group of high-profile Americans in Washington, D.C., between 100 and 150 government officials, sources tell us. Now, among those, senior administration officials, multiple U.S. senators. Now, U.S. officials are stressing that even the U.S. government relies on the private sector for communications. So those 8 telco companies, they're responsible for kicking out the hackers out of their systems, and they have not done that yet. But in the meantime, one way we can all protect ourselves using encrypted messaging apps, so technology like WhatsApp, Signal, those blue iMessage text bubbles. Liz?
And Nicole, I want to go back to the topic that we covered at the beginning of this interview, Pat Fallon grilling the head of the Secret Service in that hearing. I want to play back some very contentious sound. Listen in.
Were you the special agent in charge of the detail that day?
Actually, could you please, staff, leave that? Oh, no, leave that one up with the circle around me. Thank you. So actually, Congressman, what you're not seeing is the sack of the detail out of the picture's view. And that is the day where we remember the more than 3,000 people that have died on 9/11. I actually responded to Ground Zero. I was there going through the ashes of the World Trade Center. I was there at Fresh Kills.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you,
Congressman.
were you the special agent in charge?
To show respect
You were not.
for a Secret Service member that died on 9/11.
Oh, that you're trying to be.
Do not invoke 9/11 for political purposes.
Oh, I'm not. I'm invoking this.
You are, sir.
Gentlemen,
And you are out of line.
I would like to ask him a question.
Please. You are out of line, Congressman.
Don't try to bully me. I am an elected member of Congress, and I'm asking you a serious question, and you are playing politics.
I am a public servant who has served this nation, and
you won't answer the question.
On our country's darkest day.
Committee will come to order.
Committee will come to order.
I'm asking you serious questions for the American people, and they're very simple. They're not trick questions. Were you the special agent in charge that day?
No, I wasn't. I was there representing the United States Secret Service, sir.
Mr. Fallon, your time's expired.
Did not affect protective operations.
You know why you were there? Because you wanted to be visible, because you are auditioning for this job.
I was there to pay respect for a fallen member of this agency.
You endangered
President out of line, Congressman.
Vice President Harris's life because you put those agents out of position.
Mr. Chairman.
Did you have a radio with you?
Mr. Fallon, your time has expired.
I did, sir, and you are out of line.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Please.
All right. And we are back in order now. We are back in order now.
Thank you.
Mr. Moskowitz, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Nicole, I just want to get your reaction to that. I mean, this was already a contentious hearing with the head of the Secret Service and Representative Pat Fallon, and it just sort of erupted into this shouting match. You've been following this very closely. What do you make of that exchange?
Yeah, Liz, and just to set the table on this moment, this actually had nothing to do with the Butler rally on July 13th or the second assassination attempt in September at West Palm Beach. Representative Pat Fallon in that exchange asking acting director Ron Rowe why on September 11th of this year at commemorative events that were attended by both President-elect Trump and President Joe Biden, why the special agent in charge was not closer to those two protectees, asking about the security plan there and about a possible photo op. You can see the prop that was used there. And then, of course, the acting director, Ron Rowe, firing back, accusing the congressman of using September 11th and that tragedy, invoking that tragedy to, talk politics. And so that sort of fiery exchange really, highlights perhaps some tensions there, between members of Congress and also the current leadership at the U.S. Secret Service. It's not directly, related to the events that happened on July 13th or, during that assassination attempt later in September in West Palm Beach. But it also underscores, perhaps some of the distaste among certain members of Congress for the current acting director. And just then and there, Congressman Pat Fallon accusing acting director Rowe of really positioning himself to be perhaps the more permanent director of the U.S. Secret Service, Liz.
All right, Nicole Sganga, the CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter, thank you so much for that.